Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Good. We get to go to Chicago this week, and then we get to keep going, and we get to go to Evanston.
And then eventually we'll get to go to Rutgers.
Why? But then eventually the sun will burn out, and will
Maybe
the death of the universe. So, I mean, the last two things are,
if
one of those two things should cheer you up.
If we're lucky, the sun will burn out before the Rutgers game, and we will not have to go there. But
these things never work out for us that well.
We're not so lucky. Yes. So today we just got done speaking with Ryan Day during the lightning round session. Today is Wednesday, Tom. Although in Ohio State week scheduling, today is Thursday. But don't get confused by that, because I'm very confused by all of this.
Except yesterday, which was Tuesday in real life, Wyatt Davis said they had their Thursday practice. So really, I mean, I think there's a decent chance Ohio State gets on the wrong airplane and ends up in Istanbul and has to forfeit this weekend.
I was watching Drake Anderson, Northwestern running back, and they were asking him about the week, or it may have been Riley Lee's the receiver. I think it was Drake Anderson. He's like, well, we're treating it as if, and this was on Monday, today is Tuesday. I don't have classes today, but I do because it's Tuesday. And then he was like, now I am confused by as well. So I hope the collective staffs of both teams and the guys behind the scenes who get people everywhere, like the transportation directors, hopefully they know what day it is.
It is amazing how much when you're in a season and you're in a routine and it's just and then we do this, and then we do this, and on this day we do this, and this we have to be at this place at this time. I mean, I'm sure it's like this for the players. It has completely screwed me up this week.
Absolutely.
Normal activities, in the evening that are completely unaffected by our normal interview schedule, we're all screwed up this week. And so, I mean, that's just for us. And this is not entirely a feel sorry for us thing. This is more if this is screwing us up, football teams are some of the most habitual groups of people you will ever meet. They do stuff at this time, this way.
Regimented.
They come, Ohio State runs out of that tunnel at 7 minutes before kickoff. They go back up that tunnel, before the game at 22 minutes before kickoff, and then the band comes down. It's to the minute planned out. So when you're off a day, it's going to mess with you a little bit.
That's 24 hours, 60 minutes, 1,000 minutes difference, that you have to account for.
If Northwestern's offense had 1,000 minutes compared to Ohio State's offense having 60 minutes, would Northwestern be able to outscore Ohio State this week?
That's a good question. I don't think so, because it's still just the Northwestern offense. Now, is there a defense playing as well? Because if there's a defense playing, then definitely not. But if there's no defense, I still think Ohio State can outscore them.
Yeah, even if it was just Northwestern's offense, they're going to get sleepy at some point. And
guys, it's been 800 minutes. Can we take a break?
You give Chase Young enough snaps against that Northwestern offensive line.
How many snaps?
It might not go well.
12 games playing against Northwestern. How many sacks would Chase Young have if those 12 games were all played in consecutive minutes?
I'm going to say all of them. All of the sacks.
He won't let anybody else have any. You mentioned just the scheduling aspect of it. Ryan Day said on his radio show today, which has also been moved up, that they have to get everybody's homework in a row and talk to the professors and say, hey, these guys aren't going to be here on Friday. And, it's not because of cutting class, even though they technically are, but they have the resources around here at Ohio State is immense for any of the teams. They all have their various personages who communicate with the professors and whatnot. But it's just even stuff like that, making sure you're not missing anything important on a Friday. But he also said they don't really have a lot of classes on Friday because they travel regularly on these days anyway.
Well, and if you remember from your days as a student at Ohio State, athletes get scheduling priority. And if you also remember from your days as an Ohio State student, everyone tries to not schedule classes on a Friday. And if athletes schedule first, they should probably not have very many Friday classes.
Yeah, so many years, I think every year I tried to get into a movie class or film class, but that was always taken by by athletes. One quarter though, Tom, my favorite quarter, I only had Monday and Wednesday classes.
That's living the dream right there.
That was living the dream. And I think I only worked Tuesday and then Thursday. And,
Can you remember free time? What that was like?
Man, that was some good times. I didn't really have a lot of free time because I spent so much time drinking. So.
And that's expensive.
Yes, it is. Ryan Day talked about all sorts of things today. But mainly he talked about Northwestern and offense.
And their grass.
And yes, their grass, which will be, I don't know, knee high by the 4th of July is what it normally is. So this will be, maybe up to the neck of the Buckeyes. You won't even be able to see players running. It's going to be like the lion tail in the savannah. If you can see that, you better get booking.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested. This is the first time, we were talking before, this is the first time I'll have covered a game at Northwestern.
Me too.
I've been to Northwestern before a couple times, including the legendary 2004 trip. Yikes. Once in 60 years, Ohio State lost. And I was there. And every time we break up Northwestern, my wife, who was also there, goes, hey, remember when we were there and we saw them lose to... Yeah.
Do I?
Boy, howdy do I. But this is the first time I'll actually have covered a game there. So, I mean, before the Rose Bowl, I went down on the field and took pictures of the grass because the whole Rose Bowl field is like a putting green. It's like the most immaculate, perfect grass you've ever seen. I'm kind of interested to go down there and take a picture of the grass down there and how long is it really? Is it really? Because, like Penn State last year, the grass was like a normal length. It was wet. They had wet it down a little bit, which is weird, but it was a normal length. I'm real interested to see whether this is, one of those urban legends of college football or whether, is this just in everyone's head or
take a
is
ruler
this really,
and tweet it. You can take the picture and then tweet that picture out and
there you go.
Go viral on that, Tom. But they did practice on grass this week because they've got 2 or 3 grass fields along with their 2 artificial.
I think it's
turf.
2. I think it's 2 and 2.
2 and 2.
Like Chuck Woolery, it's 2 and 2.
2 and 2.
And they said, Ryan Day said they did let the grass grow longer on the natural grass fields.
But he also said, both teams have to deal with it, and he doesn't think it'll impact them too much. But if you're Northwestern, you got to do everything you can to even the odds, other than recruiting.
It's funny because
yeah.
Anyway, Northwestern. I mean, there's a lot about this game that does not seem like it's going to be in Northwestern's favor.
Is it 28 points still?
The last time I saw it was 27.5 or 28 point line for Ohio State. Which on the road in a conference game is a whole lot. I mean,
that's like Illinois.
Yeah, I mean that's
Rutgers almost.
And there's, if you look at what the Ohio State defense has done, basically not allowing points with their starters all year, and you look at what the Northwestern offense has done, which is
not score with their starters
all year. Yeah, they're averaging 15.5 points, but as you pointed out earlier, they've only exceeded that average of 15.5 points once, and that was against UNLV, who is not great.
No, they scored. That was their only win. They scored 30 points in that one.
Yes, a whopping 30 points against UNLV.
This Northwestern offense, where and I was watching Pat Fitzgerald's press conference earlier in the week, and he talked about TJ Green, who is the injured quarterback, and Hunter Johnson, who is also injured but still playing through some injuries, how they were further along than quarterback Aiden Smith, who has now been playing. And the fact that Hunter Johnson has come back down or has not continued to distance himself, part of that is injury. I would say most of that is just because he's not playing very well, and you've got to do something. And yes, because he's been hurt here and there, the third guy then gets some action, and then you see, you know what? He's not always as terrible as Hunter Johnson, and maybe he deserves some snaps. And now you've got a little bit of a competition, or at least you can't call it a two-headed monster.
It's not it's like a pug with 2 heads.
Two-headed pug.
Yeah, it's both of their quarterbacks are below 50% in completion percentage this year. And that's just atrocious because it's not, this is not like an air raid system where they're firing it 30 yards down the field. There's a lot of check down in this offense and a lot of short routes and crossing routes and, swing passes to the running backs and screens, those should all be very high percentage passes. Like last year when Dwayne Haskins was completing 70 whatever percent he completed, it was, the criticism was, well, yes, of course, anyone can complete 70 something percent on these touch passes and swing passes and short crossing routes. It's like, well, no, apparently not everyone can do that.
And the thing is, even 2 weeks ago was their last game at Nebraska. As a team, they completed nearly 60% of their passes, but still only like 4.3 yards per attempt. So they are throwing short and nothing is happening, even when they complete them or do not complete them. But in 3 of their Big Ten games, they've been over 50% completions twice. But still, that's not. It's 51.4% and 59.4%. It's
right. They're not going 80 to 85% when they're over 50.
There's no 20 of 25. Yeah. It's 19 of 37. It's 18 of 41. It's 19 of 32. And there's 1 touchdown to 5 interceptions in Big Ten play.
Yeah. On the year, 61 passes completed out of 130 attempts, 2 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That seems bad.
Who's that for?
It's Northwestern on the year.
Jeez.
Northwestern as a team on the year. 4.35 average yards per attempt. I mean, so if you're completing 50% of your passes and you're averaging 4.35 yards per attempt, even in 4 attempts, you're only going to complete 2 of them. 2 times 4.35 is not a first down.
No, and
that's bad.
4.3 yards per attempt running the ball is not great.
And they're at 3.6 yards per attempt rushing
exactly.
the ball.
So that's there's just no offense there. And when you look at going on the road, I guess it's always maybe a scary proposition. But there needs to be some offense. There needs to be a threat there. And right now with this offense, there is no threat. There's nothing consistent about it. They can't run it, they can't throw it, and they can't do it in the red zone either. So it's like even if they go from 20 to 20, Ohio State would lock them down, and as other teams have. I think they've got 5 or 6 touchdowns on the season. And when you look at like, well, how can they score? This is where you said like last week, like miracle or act of God, and then a miracle happened basically. Yeah. And that's what's going to have to happen here, because this is one of the worst offenses Ohio State will see, if not the worst.
Again, we will have to go watch them play at Rutgers in a couple weeks. So Sorry to use the R word there. I apologize.
Sorry if I'm hoping for the sun to burn out and expecting maybe that will happen.
Yeah, you either need something miraculous or you need multiple scores or extraordinarily short fields off of turnovers. If Ohio State muffs a kickoff inside the 10 and Justin Fields throws a pick 6 and then there's a fumble inside the Ohio State 15-yard line. Okay, maybe that gets Northwestern to 17 points, and then maybe they put together one drive for another touchdown or something and you get to 24 points, and even then you still probably need Ohio State to have a below average game on offense, on every other drive in addition to the ones where they've turned the ball over, to not be able to score 24 points.
Tom, do you know how many Northwestern receivers have scored this year?
I believe I saw that I did think they just said that they had 2 touchdown passes. So I'm going to say that, the answer is either 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that the answer is 1.
That is correct.
Yes.
Sophomore J.J. Jefferson with 10 catches for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. And when you think about this Northwestern passing game...
Do I have to?
Just for a moment, not much longer, maybe 45 minutes tops. Matched up against Ohio State's secondary, this feels like an area where Ohio State might have a slight advantage when they have 3 NFL cornerbacks going against a Northwestern offense that may not have as much NFL talent.
In your opinion?
In my opinion, in the passing area. And I don't know that Ohio State will be able to change things up. They could just go man and lock these guys up if they wanted to. But we've also seen where Northwestern in the slot, they've had some success against Ohio State over the years. But I think with the addition of Ohio State playing more zone, that kind of eliminates that. And this feels like a game where not only will Hunter Johnson be running for his life, Aiden Smith will be, and then throughout that, while they're doing this, they have to try to find receivers who are as open as they can be, knowing that they probably won't be all that open.
Right. This just has the feel of a game where Northwestern completes like 10 of 25 passes for like maybe 100 yards, maybe, or 120 yards, and no touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Like it just seems like there's a better chance that one of their quarterbacks throws a touchdown to an Ohio State defensive back than to one of their wide receivers.
You might be able to get some. Yeah, I could see that. Might get some decent odds on that one. It doesn't. I just don't see things faring well, and that's just the passing game. You look at the running game, and there's no reason to think that Northwestern will be able to run the ball. They have some running threat with their quarterbacks, but nothing that Ohio State hasn't been able to tackle before this season. And Drake Anderson is their leading rusher, and he's averaging maybe like 3.5, 4 yards a carry. There's no big plays. There's no Stevie Scott or anything like that, where even those guys got shut down by Ohio State. And I don't really see where 250 yards total offense, something like that from Northwestern. I think that would be about where they top out. Because even if Ohio State is up big, I still don't see them being able to move the ball against the second and third team, or slinging it around, trying to move the ball or play catch up. The talent just isn't there.
Right. This isn't a team that, even if they get into that second team Ohio State defense, you have to be able to throw the ball accurately enough to have the receiver catch it. And then, which has been an issue. It's not to complete less than 50% of your passes against a schedule that's been, outside of Wisconsin, not that impressive. I mean, they really have not played anyone. Nebraska's fine, but you saw Nebraska's defense has some vulnerabilities that teams can exploit. There's not a lot here that's like, oh yeah, that's going to be, Stanford this year is not, you think of Stanford like, oh, a big man ball team, great defense. They're not the Stanford of norm this year. And this is not the normal Northwestern. Like, you think of Northwestern as, the kind of pain in the butt, scrappy team that plays good defense, very solid overall, can do enough to kind of be a pain. And this year's team just doesn't, the offense is just so non-existent that they're not at that level.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering what, like Sean Wade, what does he do against this offense? And maybe he blitzes some more just to give him something to do. And while we're talking about Sean Wade, he was asked this week about the NFL. And Tom, he said there was he's not even thinking about it. He's just focused on the season at hand and playing. And you know what, Tom, if you just do that, then everything will work out in terms of you're playing well because you're focused on playing. Mm-hmm. And then if you're playing well, then you'll have an NFL decision to make. Nobody makes it in October, even though many have. It's like it's not necessary. Mm-hmm. Because as, we saw with Damon Arnett, I think we talked about it on the last show, his decision was made a couple times in January. Mm-hmm. And so Sean Wade had those questions to answer, and I thought he answered them just as you would expect, where he's like, it's not my priority right now. His priority is the Ohio State defense, and then, maybe January that changes.
Yeah, and Jeff Okuda was kind of in the same boat where it was just, that is the correct answer. Like, that's the answer you have to give, but it's also the right answer, assuming it's true. And you would certainly assume that any effort, this goes back to, remember when we talked about Ryan Day and what does he think about Friday games? Mm-hmm. Like, anytime you're spending thinking about Friday games is wasted effort because you don't have any, this is a circle of influence versus a circle of concern thing. Like, you worry about the stuff you can change. You don't worry about the stuff that is outside of your outside of your control, because that's just wasted energy, because you can't do anything about it.
And that's always a coaching thing. You know, Urban Meyer said it, all coaches have said it. If you can't change anything, then there's no sense in wasting time on it, because you're already so stretched thin on everything else you're doing as a head coach with a program like this that you're not looking for more things to worry about. You're looking for fewer things to worry about.
Well, and this is the same thing that you can go through with, like, going into a game and saying, I really want to get an interception. I really want to get a pick six this week. Like, that's when you get off of your game and you're thinking about stuff that you shouldn't be thinking about. And that's when you give up a big play. You worry about your stuff. Like, you handle your business, you do your job, and sometimes the ball's going to come to you, and then you'll get your interception. You can't go in saying, I'm going to get a pick six, because then you start, you're trying to jump a route because you think it's an out, and then, it's an out and up, and then the guy's behind you. I mean, that happens. You have to just focus on doing your job. And that's very much been the theme inside the WAC this week. I mean, Ryan Day's theme this week was white belt mentality, which is a martial arts thing, because a white belt, I mean, everyone knows black belt is the expert in karate. The white belt is the guy who's brand new, just walked into the dojo, and he doesn't know anything. And he knows he doesn't know anything, and he's just there to be a sponge and learn and not assume anything. That's the mentality he wants this team to have this week. Don't assume anything. Don't go in thinking, yeah, we got this. We know what we're doing. Learn, listen, and then focus on what you're being told to do, and just do that stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting where you come in every day with something to prove. Because, Tom, everybody loves new belts. Mm-hmm. And the more you get, the nicer colors. You can, use them with more stuff. They go together with more outfits. I never did karate.
But a white belt after Labor Day, though. I mean, that's not very fashionable.
Well, that's why you gotta bust your butt. You don't want to be stuck with that white belt. Like, if you join like August 15th, you're pretty much screwed right there. I wonder if they even offer classes at that point. You can't. We don't take new students. The cutoff is like June, because you got like 2.5, 3 months to get that yellow green belt.
I don't know. Belt. When Ryan Day explains it to me later, I'll know. But
yeah, ask him like, what belt do you hold, Ryan? Although, when during this off week they went to the players and told them 3 things to work on, 3 things they do well. And somebody asked Ryan Day, well, what were your 3 things that you need to do well and 3 things you need to work on or whatever? And he's like, well, I didn't do it for myself. I run this place. Basically, he was Terrell Pryor for a moment. He's like, I didn't.
There's a deep cut.
It's a very deep cut. But yeah, it was, but again, we have left this building later than he has at times.
That's true. Must improve. Hours clocked in. He is, he talked about the fact that he obviously has a lot of things that he does want to improve on, a lot of areas he wants to improve on, and he didn't go into them. There's generally asking for a lot of specifics. You're not going to get a lot of answers on that. That's true of strategic stuff. That's true of, someone asked him about what they learned in self-scout during the week off. And, the things that they didn't realize about their team, tendencies, that kind of stuff. You go, oh yeah, there was a lot of stuff. And then it was like, well, formations and down and distance stuff. And it was like, well,
football stuff,
football stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We tend to football more on second down. So, yeah, I mean, you're not, which obviously makes sense. They don't want to, if they're, running the ball more on second and long out of 12 personnel than you would have expected, they're not going to tell you that they know that, because then you know that they know that, and that you might be adjusting and getting away from that tendency.
All right, Tom, let's move to the offensive side of the ball. But first, let's take a commercial break, hear from our sponsors. Ohio State's offense against Northwestern's defense. This is where the game gets interesting for me, and probably for everybody else, because I'm not alone. I'm not in this car. I'm not even alone. But the Northwestern defense is, I think what they did to Wisconsin is very impressive, and I should have kept that page up. But they, first of all, that was the most points they scored all season, 15. So Hurrah for them. But they held Wisconsin like under 300 yards of total offense. I think held them to like 130 yards rushing. Mm-hmm. So there is the possibility, and this is a very veteran defense. So they've been around. They've played Ohio State before. They probably can't learn much from last year's game against the Buckeyes when Ohio State was throwing for 499 yards and rushing for 106 or something. But in their loss, their 24-15 loss at Wisconsin, they held the Badgers to 130 yards rushing and 113 yards passing, 243 yards total, 4.1 yards per play. That to me means this is a defense that Ohio State could have some issues with.
They could.
Tom, sell it, man. Sell it.
Yeah, you've got. I think Wisconsin is probably a little more one-dimensional this year than Ohio State is. And the weather forecast for Friday, if this was like a rainy day or it was going to be 30-mile-an-hour winds, you might look at that as something that could really turn Ohio State one-dimensional, and then you can get into that kind of issue. Because, Wisconsin obviously has an offensive line that's at least comparable to Ohio State's. Jonathan Taylor is at least comparable to J.K. Dobbins. I mean, that is an area where there are not very many units in the Big Ten that can match up with Ohio State. Those are a couple areas where you're like, yep, those are comparable, and you could argue maybe even better in some spots. Taylor finished with 119 yards rushing in that game, which, that is like nothing by his standards. It's still, if J.K. Dobbins runs for 119 yards on Friday, Ohio State's going to win the game. I mean, that's how it is. And that was a game that we watched. That was the week of the Nebraska game, because I remember watching the beginning of that in a hotel room, I believe.
And we knew it would be low scoring.
And you knew it was going to be low scoring, and it was going to be, Wisconsin's good for one of those a year, it seems like, where they come out a little flat. They're wearing those terrible tan pants, which can't have helped anything. And
were they khaki?
They looked like khakis, yes. But that was the week after they beat Michigan. So it was a little bit of a letdown spot for them. It's a noon kickoff, all that stuff. So, the Northwestern defense deserves a lot more respect than the Northwestern offense does. They have held teams down, statistically this year in a way that, they look competent, mm-hmm. which is very much what you would expect from a Pat Fitzgerald defense.
Well, and that's something that Ryan Day kept saying. It's very much a Pat Fitzgerald defense. One thing that confuses me here, and just looking over at these games, UNLV rushed for 210 yards on them. Tom, how did they do that? Offhand, do you know?
This may surprise you. I didn't watch that game in its entirety. That's on me. I apologize.
Did you take notes?
Some.
Did you chart it?
Some. My dog ate them. I apologize.
Oh, that's too bad. But yeah, it's weird that UNLV can do that. Maybe it was just that's what they were doing at the end of the game when it didn't matter. But you figure, much like with Michigan State, who they kept comparing these two defenses to, and Northwestern will mix up some coverages, but I do believe they do some cover for like Michigan State. Eventually, the dam begins to break. And yes, they may hold up for the first quarter. They've got all of this emotion, this home night game, wearing dark uniforms, which makes you stronger, as everybody knows. The darker the uniform, the harder you will play. And if you can get the most black on your uniform, you cannot play better than that. Can
you imagine covering a football team that has to resort to some kind of a gimmick like black uniforms for a night game? Like what kind of second-rate operation, I ask you?
And doing it at like Papa John's Stadium or something like that. But this Northwestern defense playing their heart out, I can see that lasting a first quarter. But the Ohio State offense, you're going to establish that run, just keep pounding it like they did against, and I think the Michigan State game is a good example. It's like a good, just a guide. You rush for maybe they had 16 yards of total offense, I believe, in that first quarter, and maybe like 6 of it was rushing or something like that. And, you're pounding that rock, and eventually as we said, for that game, the rock will break. And I don't think it'll take as much pounding. I don't think this rock is as big. But it seems to me like if J.K. Dobbins runs for 119 yards, I would almost feel like it's because he didn't need to run for any more, and Master Teague is probably at like 85 or something like that because he got most of the third quarter and some of the fourth.
Well, you go back to that Michigan State game, and there was just one Master Teague run that I remember watching, and it was towards the end of the game, and they had very clearly that was it. Michigan State was done. No more football for us, thanks. And Teague got a handoff in a very obvious running situation. And it was like the Red Sea parted in front of him, and he just went zipping right by people and, took a very routine handoff for like a 35-yard gain. You're going to probably see that at some point because the interior of Northwestern's defensive line is fine. They have some good, capable players there, but that's not that you can't do that and just have those same guys out there for 60 snaps, 70 snaps, and expect them to be just as good in the fourth quarter as they are in the first, because Ohio State's going to lean on you. And then if you bring in a fresh Master Teague after halftime and the defensive line's a little gassed, those little holes from the first half turn into big holes, and you've got a fresh pair of legs running through them. The meter can start spinning pretty quickly as you're piling up rushing yardage.
Yeah, and Northwestern, we know, has really good linebackers. They've been around forever. Patty Fisher, who I think is maybe like a 2-time All Big Ten guy. And so there's other guys, like Blake Gallagher was, he led the Big Ten in tackles last year, or was real close to it. So there are veteran guys there. Got a couple pass rushers on the edge, and Joe Gaziano and Sam Miller, who haven't been super productive this year. But Ryan Day did say that, talking about the offensive line, he likes the interior. He thinks the outside guys can do a better job of pass protecting, and I think that's going to be key in this one, because if Justin Fields does not have time, then it makes this game more interesting, obviously. But then it also, if he doesn't have a lot of time, he'll escape and do something there and create there, which Ryan Day talked about. He didn't want to stifle Justin Fields' creativity. So it's almost, damned if you do, damned if you don't for Northwestern, but obviously they would prefer to just rush him and whatever happens after that happens, but you try to keep him contained, and I guess how well you do that will determine your fate.
Well, there's a lot of discipline that goes into pass rushing a quarterback as mobile as Justin Fields, because you want to get upfield, but as a defensive end, you don't ever want to be behind the quarterback.
Yeah.
If you're a defensive end behind the quarterback, that means that quarterback has a very easy lane to run through to get past you, and no matter how quick you are as a defensive end, you're not catching Justin Fields. So you are basically, once you're behind him, you are basically out of the play, unless he's just sitting back there too long, which we've seen. Yeah. We have seen him hold the ball too long.
Also said that was one of the things he was working on.
Yeah. And that's something that we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Like, that's a game reps thing. That is the more you play against live defense, the more that clock in your head's going to be accurate. Like, hey, I've had it here for a little while. I need to tuck it and I either need to throw it or I need to tuck it and go. Because Alex Grinch talked this week about not Alex Grinch.
Wow, Tom.
Wow,
geez,
dollar in the jar.
Deep cut there. Alex Grinch.
Another dollar in the jar. Jeff Hafley talked this week about Justin Fields and the fact that he doesn't just hit that back foot in the pocket, throw it to the first guy, and the first guy he sees, and if that guy's not open, stick his foot in the ground and go. He waits. Which is, that's good. Mm-hmm. You want to make that defense cover a little longer. You want to go through your reads. He does that. But you have to, at some point, like, you can't go through your 5 reads and then go back, maybe the first guy's open again. Like, you gotta go through your progression, and then you gotta do something with it.
Yeah, and what did Jim Haycock say this week then also, Tom?
I really wish I could remember an old Jim Haycock saying.
The Northwestern, they're like middle of the road defending the pass as well, so I'm expecting things to be just fine there. They've got 2 interceptions on the season in 5 games, so they don't get to the quarterback a lot. There's it'll be tough sledding early on, I'm guessing, with the running game, but they'll eventually hit some big ones, and we'll see what the wind is like if they want to take some shots downfield when they have an opportunity. Have you been thinking about a score prediction, Tom? I have not.
I haven't really either. It seems like Northwestern's probably in the single digits. Ohio State's, unless they get a rouge, I don't think they're gonna get one. But something in the 38-6 range, 38-3, something like that. Probably. I'll have to.
Yeah,
I'll have to think about it. But
I don't really have a great number that just pops in. Sometimes 42-17 is just the perfect score, but that does not apply here.
Yeah, no.
The 17 part.
No.
And that's 30. Yeah, I have no idea. 38. But it's not great podcasting, I know, as you try to just come up with scores that don't mean anything to you or don't jump out at you. But I feel like 28 points that line should be, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that did not jump out as wow, that's too many points on the road. It's a lot of points on the road, but it didn't jump out as too many points on the road.
How'd you feel about the 10.5 for Wisconsin?
Yeah, the early line for Ohio State was Ohio State, Wisconsin's Ohio State by 10.5 against Wisconsin. I mean, that's a lot of points.
Yeah.
I mean, Wisconsin's a pretty good team. Now, Ohio State's obviously gotten off to quite a good start. Both teams are playing opponents this weekend who they should beat fairly comfortably. So that should be 7-0 versus 7-0. That's 10.5 is a lot. It's not prohibitively high, but I was expecting something more in the kind of touchdown range. 7.5. Yeah. To not just be 10.5 is a lot of points. But yeah, the way Ohio State has played offense and the way Ohio State has played defense, you can't say no. I have not been consistently guessing too high on any of these games in terms of Ohio State scores. So.
No, you have not, hater.
Now, we did both nail the exact point total for the Michigan State game. So
yes, we did, and that's just because that was 2 weeks ago doesn't mean we're not gonna take a victory lap.
Well, we didn't get to take a victory lap last week because there wasn't a prediction column. So
that's too bad. That's too bad. Yeah, so we did very well, and I'm sure we'll do well once we come up with our actual score in this one for the Northwestern game as well. Well, there'll be time next week to talk about Wisconsin, clearly. The television situation with the Northwestern game.
Yes. That just if you had missed this on Wednesday afternoon, the ALCS game between the Yankees and the Astros got rained out. So there is a. You're making a face like I said something wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
No. Okay. No. I was just hoping you would.
The ALCS game between the Yankees and Alex Grinch got rained out, and so they are now
Grinch
playing.
Can't hit a curveball.
They are now playing. They're now playing on Friday evening. The WWE is on the Fox network that evening, so that's not going to get moved. The baseball game is now on the FS1, which is where the Buckeyes are playing. The Buckeyes are now on Big Ten Network, so adjust your DVRs accordingly.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be no issues there.
Yeah, at least they got it figured out a couple days in advance, because but
my TV guide says Fox. FS1. You don't even have FS1. If you are still getting a TV guide, I doubt you have FS1.
I'm going to guess that TV Guide has never actually printed the letters FS1 in together, because I don't think TV Guide has been a thing since FS1 has been a thing. So,
well, that can't be true. Tom, anything else from Ohio State today or even from this week? Because we didn't really get to touch too much on the Tuesday stuff.
I did like the Northwestern football's hype video. The theme of the hype video was "Do not go gentle into that good night," which it's a game, but that's a poem about death, from a Welsh poet who drank himself to death. So hashtag B1G there.
Well, you ever been to Wrigleyville?
I have. Yes.
You go.
Yeah. To make your hype video a poem about, well, I'm going to die, but I'm not going to make it easy. I mean, that's probably a pretty good representation of what's going to happen Friday.
That's true.
They should hang in there for a while, but
it's like it's either that or Faces of Death.
That poem only ends one way, friends. that was a choice. We all make choices, and that was a choice. Northwestern football.
No, that was exactly. Anything else that before we get to just the Patreon stuff?
No, I think oh, you know what? We've talked Ryan Day and pizza for just a minute.
Oh,
there was a social media question on the Ryan Day radio show today. What's your favorite Chicago style deep dish pizza? And Ryan Day said, more of a New York style guy, more of a thin crust guy. Ryan Day, still undefeated.
Well, I can side with the thin crust over deep dish. What I would have also liked to ask, and I could have, but I would have felt irresponsible asking him about his pizza choices today. What about just regular crust? Just good old American crust. I don't know exactly what region to ascribe it to, but my thing with thin crust, I love thin crust pizza. I would eat it. It could be my sole pizza, but I should not have to pay as much for a regular pizza as I do a thin crust pizza. There's less of it.
See, but you can eat more of the delicious toppings and less of the crust there. So you don't fill up on crust because no one likes crust.
But there's the same amount of toppings on a regular crust.
Mm-hmm.
So why should I have to pay more for less pizza of a thin crust?
Because it's more delicious. Next question.
I'm not paying for deliciousness. I'm paying for ingredients. No.
Quantity over quality. That explains a lot of your food opinions. This is all making sense now.
Meanwhile, says people who eat wings and only half of a wing you can actually eat because the rest is bone. So.
Well, the other ones aren't wings, so those are chicken nuggets. I have children. I know what chicken nuggets are.
Anyway, would you eat pizza if it had bone in it?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with what part of the animal kingdom pizza is from. So,
all right, Tom. This show has gone on long enough.
Too long, in fact.
Too long. So the Patreon thing, which we mentioned on the last show, we are currently setting that up. And again, if you have any feedback, we appreciate those of you who have sent things in, sent ideas in, and we would just encourage you to continue to do that. And help us out and just let us know, what would be interesting to you or what you would feel worth investing in, or just what would you like to hear from us, or, anything of that sort. And again, we still have some stuff to send out to people, so that will be getting done as well. Tom, anything further, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, just the Patreon thing, as we explained on Tuesday, where nothing is going away. Yeah. This is just additional content if you'd like additional content. And when we say we're interested in your opinion, we really mean it. We would like to know. We've had a number of people kind of weigh in on some of the suggestions we threw out earlier in the week. One of them was like a national college football show. Would you like to hear us talk for half an hour or whatever every week about, outside of Ohio State, like what else is going on in the national college football sphere, and maybe with a little bit of an Ohio State bent to it. That's one of the possibilities. We've talked about, doing listener deep dive kind of shows, like, listeners send in I would really love you guys to do a deep dive on, the history of whatever, the Buckeye helmet stickers. We had people suggest going back.
Like a hardcore history of Ohio State. 6 hours on a Buckeye sticker,
that might be a little aggressive. We might have to set a new Patreon pricing level for a 6 hour deep dive hardcore history show. One of the people that contacted us this week thought that, go back and rewatch games. Maybe do rewatch the 40-minute version of some Ohio State game, either a current game or past, and kind of give a live commentary over that. So any of that kind of stuff, if you'd be interested in that, let us know. We're happy to. This is for you.
Right.
We want to do things that you're interested in hearing, and so let us know what you're interested in hearing, and we will do those things.
Yep, and I think that says it all. So we appreciate y'all listening. We will talk to you next time from Evanston, Illinois.